Welcome to part 2 of my toxic femininity discussion. If you missed part 1, I'll put a card up with the link. And don't worry, I got something for the boys later. I said the boys' time was coming. That time is now. Welcome to the Red Room, where we consider more, and sometimes rant. Let me preface this by saying that the purpose of this video isn't to slander or defame all men. There's plenty of that going on already, and I, for one, love and appreciate men. I'm just laying out my observations, same as I did with my toxic femininity videos. I'll put the title cards up for those videos now. Also, this video won't be condemning masculine traits that are essential to any functioning society, such as strength, assertiveness, outspokenness, etc. I'm going after traits that are actually toxic. Now, with that cleared up, allow me to posit that the conflict between men and women has very much been manufactured. The roles we've been told to play and admonished not to play have been so vast and so restrictive until recent history. This idea that men and women are fundamentally, intrinsically different has been both the reason of our attraction and our repulsion. Can't live with them, can't live without them, am I right? Or so it's been made to be. Yes, there are differences between men and women, psychological, physiological, etc. But we're not alien to each other. We all have the same basic needs and many aligning desires. But this idea that at our deepest core we're so unlike each other and thus unable to understand each other is one of the biggest reasons toxic behavior toward the opposite sex arise. Any aspect of ourselves that goes unregulated can grow to the greatest of extremes, and the same applies here. Strength taken to the extreme becomes violence. Outspokenness becomes a domineering personality. These extremes have many a time been manifested in history, be it through dictatorships, wars, riches, etc. Those are the clearest signifiers of someone who's let one aspect of themselves run rampant. At the smaller, much more relatable scale, this can be seen in various interpersonal relationships. In a world that expects boys and men to be able to take it on the chin, a more aggressive, stoic personality is generally smiled upon. You've seen it before, the badass archetype. I'm not gonna lie, even I have fun with it, hence my adoration of a certain slicing, dicing connect. The violence is entertaining, even though most of us would never do a fraction of what we see on the screen. But why is that? Well, the same reason certain women feel inclined to hypersexualize themselves as a form of entertainment. Reward. Just as women in positions of influence are being rewarded for their promiscuity and materialistic lifestyles, so have men been rewarded for their ability to exert force and push boundaries, in whatever form that may be. The weakling doesn't get the girl, the badass does. The Poindexter doesn't save the day, no, the badass does. And this would be fine if fiction were left as fiction. But inevitably, some of these things become the building blocks for how people perceive the world later on in life. Radical masculinity has gone relatively unopposed until recently, but the pushback has, for the most part, been on the wrong things. Misunderstandings, bad faith, bias, things like that. The interesting thing is this. What women have been shunned for in the past, they're glorified for today. The reverse is now true for men. These days, they're held accountable for behavior that was once deemed normal. In other words, they are no longer rewarded for their brand of toxic behavior, while women now are. And I think this is where a lot of pushback is coming from. Maybe in these people's minds, it's an affront to their manhood. After all, in a world that claims chivalry is dead, and with hookup culture on the rise, where's the harm? Women are treating them the same way, right? Use me, I'll use you. Not defending or advocating for this way of thinking, by the way, but it's something to consider. It's why the one time I was ever asked on a real date, the guy forced me to touch him. It's why a lot of us girls are just another notch on some dude's belt, and vice versa. It's all traumatizing and it's all #yuck. We've become toys to each other in some strange grapple for power, and the men either emulating learned behavior or stuck with unresolved childhood trauma end up leaning hard into forceful, entitled behavior, and to them it's normal. The thing is, many men weren't taught how to empathize with and understand women. And again, vice versa, pitchforks down. In my own experience, there are very few people I come across who grew up in a traditional nuclear family. One of the parents is almost always out of the home, and it's almost always the father, especially in minority groups. I think we can all see what that does. It can lead to dismissiveness or even resentment toward the opposite sex, or in girls' case, over attachment to the opposite sex, and the search for daddy in all the wrong places. No, not that kind of daddy. But sometimes that kind of daddy. Anyway, forwardness gets pushed to aggression, Confidence gets pushed to entitlement, and I think it's a defense mechanism, something to make up for what they believe they were cheated out of. And some of them were cheated out of important experiences. That's fair. But to project this personality that is so demanding of others' time, bodies, and resources, it's not the way to deal with it. For some men, emotions are like inexterminable weeds that can be screwed, fought, and drunken away for a time, and as such, they're never properly acknowledged. There are some men who are proud to say they haven't shed a tear in years, but regularly give in to anger or aggression. I don't know, but that sounds like a lot of misplaced feelings to me. Society has put out this idea that men can only emote during the worst of tragedies, like the loss of a loved one, but anything less than that is essentially childish or weak. It's learned behavior. No one wants to be weak, and for most men, strength is kind of a big deal. But that's the thing. The idea of strength has been so thoroughly misconstrued. Strength means suppression. Strength means aggression. Strength means anything but proper introspection. These outbursts and resentments are all misdirection, a sort of smokescreen that hides real pain deep down. But let's not infantilize anyone. Every lucid adult has the responsibility to work out his or her own traumas and psychological hangups. The thing is, many men aren't taught how to, or even that they should. If we're looking at this from an old world perspective, women are the ones who are emotional, delicate, and needy. Men are the strong providers who grit their teeth in the face of strife and adversity. They don't worry, they don't cry, and they certainly don't lean on anyone else. I don't think this mentality has completely left our psyche. True, there are things that make a man feel like a man and a woman feel like a woman, and certain proclivities attached to those things. But to abandon the emotionality of oneself, it opens the doors to many issues later on. Take the alpha male archetype, for example. The alphaness of a man seems to hinge on how tough he can build his exterior, which is cool. It's a tough world. But what's not cool is these guys' tendencies to deride those who don't hold the same values. You're not alpha if you don't XXX, or you're beta if you YYY. This puts men in a box, and a small one at that. Every action or inaction is then a test of manhood, and that's not how it should be. Hence the current crusade against toxic masculinity, which has its pitfalls. For those so inclined to double down on toxicity, the real kind, this trend of putting all men under a microscope kind of takes the spotlight away from the real creeps, leaving us at square one. As with all forms of cancel culture, when everyone's the villain, no one is. This hypervigilance, while understandable, is also kind of useless, because it isn't the groomers or abusers or offenders that often get hurt. Many of them fall through the cracks, or at least get away with what they're doing for a long time. In reality, it's everyone else who gets affected. People get more defensive and less trusting of one another, all too ready to take what someone else says or does and believe the worst. Now, alphaness is conflated with toxicity and docility with goodness. A person can smile sweetly in your face as they twist the knife in your gut. But alas, we live in a world where appearances mean everything. So the men who have made dumb mistakes in the past are brutally tried at the podium of judgment, which in turn may cause them to make even more dumb mistakes, as they're ill-equipped to handle attacks on their personhood. I could really go on, but I feel like this has been long enough. If you made it this far, thanks. Let me know if you'd like a part 2 to this, or if there's a specific topic you want tackled. I appreciate everyone who's stuck with me thus far. Here's some more growth this year, and remember, take that leap. See you soon.